Hey everyone, welcome back to this special journey into the things most people never get told about gemstones. Because today's video isn't just about rare stones, it's about the stones ancient cultures linked to demons, dark spirits, curses, and the unseen, not as fantasy, but as warnings. And before you click away, let me say this clearly. Some of the stones on this list are cheap. Some are common. And yet, one of them has quietly sold for prices that can rival high-end diamonds, depending on where it came from, what story follows it, and what collectors believe it represents. That's why you should not skip this video. Because if you collect gemstones, buy crystals, or even keep healing stones in your home, you might already own one of these, and not realize what it has been associated with for centuries. And here's the part that makes this unsettling. In the ancient world, people didn't call it toxic gas. They called it a presence. They didn't call it mercury poisoning. They called it possession. They didn't call it volcanic glass. They called it a stone that could cut open the boundary between worlds. So in this video, we're counting down the top 10 gemstones and minerals, ancient cultures linked to demons and dark spirits. And we're doing it the right way. Not with cheap horror, but with real history, real geology, and the hidden reasons these stones earned their reputation. And trust me, the stone at number 1 is not just famous. It's the kind of stone that has been used in rituals, buried with the dead, and collected like a weapon. And the price? Let's just say, if you ever see a genuine, high-grade piece tied to the right origin, you could be looking at a value jump that most people would never expect from something that looks so simple. Now, if you feel like this is the beginning of something new, leave a comment saying, "I like this video." So I know you're with me on this journey into the gemstone world, and stay until the end to see the number 1 stone. Because you might already own it. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe, because this channel is built for deep dives like this, where gemstones aren't just beautiful, they're history. And if you're busy and don't have time to watch right now, save this video, because it's a genuinely fascinating journey into stones you've probably never truly understood. All right, let's begin. At number 10.
Top 10. Sulfur, the stone that smelled like hell. There's a reason sulfur is one of the only minerals in history that people didn't need a priest to fear. They just needed their nose. In medieval Europe and in the oldest Christian folklore, the smell of sulfur wasn't treated as bad air. It was treated like evidence, something you could sense before you could explain. A sudden sulfur stench in an empty room? People didn't call it chemistry. They called it a presence. For centuries, sulfur was linked to the one place humans agreed they never wanted to go, hell. And in the public imagination, that smell became the signature of demons. Not because someone invented it for drama, but because sulfur truly appears in the same places people historically believed were gateways to the underworld. Volcanoes, hot springs, fumaroles, burning ground. And here's the part that still fascinates me as both a reporter and a geologist. The superstition wasn't random. It was geographically accurate. Sulfur is one of the few minerals that can form right at the surface, bright, unnatural, and almost alive-looking, near places where the earth literally breathes heat and gas. Now, what does sulfur look like? Pure sulfur can form sharp, brittle crystals, sometimes like jagged crowns, sometimes like tiny blades. But the most iconic form is volcanic sulfur. Chunky, irregular pieces that look like the ground coughed them out. The color is the real shock. It's not a normal yellow. It's an aggressive electric yellow, the kind your brain associates with warning signs, poison, and things you shouldn't touch. And sulfur isn't just a little smelly. Even clean specimens can carry a matchstick scent because sulfur is chemically tied to the same compounds that create the odor of rotten eggs. So when ancient people smelled sulfur near a crater or a steaming cave, they weren't imagining a demon. They were detecting gases that can absolutely kill you. That's why sulfur became spiritual horror in mineral form. Danger you couldn't see, but could smell. Now the money side. Sulfur is one of the rare demon stones that stays cheap at the bottom and only becomes expensive when the geology is perfect. Small, rough chunks often sell for $5 to $30. Better crystals usually land around $50 to $200, especially from classic locations like Sicily or Bolivia. But museum-grade sulfur, large, intact, and intensely yellow, can reach $500 to $2,000 plus. And that's the irony. The stone once feared as the smell of hell is now displayed under glass like treasure. Sulfur terrified people because it announced danger before you could even see it. One breath near the wrong crater, and you understood why cultures called it hell. But the next stone on this list is more disturbing for a different reason. Because it didn't warn you. It seduced you. If sulfur was fear through smell, then this one was fear through color. A red so intense it looked like fresh blood. A pigment so powerful that ancient cultures painted it into tombs, pressed it into sacred seals, and treated it like a substance that could control life and death. And the cruel twist is this. They weren't wrong to treat it like a spiritual force, because this stone didn't just symbolize danger, it created it. At number 9, cinnabar, the red stone that looked like power and worked like poison. Top 9, cinnabar, the red stone that looked like blood and worked like poison. If sulfur was the smell of hell, then cinnabar was the color of it. Across ancient China, Rome, and parts of the Islamic world, cinnabar wasn't just a mineral, it was a symbol, a red substance so vivid that people treated it like it came from a place deeper than the earth. In early spiritual traditions, that color wasn't seen as pretty, it was seen as power. Because cinnabar doesn't look like a normal stone. It looks like something alive. In old burial sites, cinnabar was sprinkled like sacred dust. It was painted into tombs, it was used in ritual markings, and in some traditions, it was believed to seal the spirit, either protecting the dead or keeping them from returning. But here's the uncomfortable truth. People didn't just fear cinnabar because of superstition. They feared it because it quietly harmed the people who worked with it. Cinnabar is mercury sulfide, the main ore of mercury, and when you heat it, grind it, or process it, you're not just handling a mineral, you're interacting with one of the most dangerous elements humans ever normalized. That's why cinnabar became linked to dark spirits, curses, and possession. Because in the ancient world, mercury poisoning didn't have a name. It had symptoms: shaking hands, mood changes, hallucinations, paranoia, memory collapse. To a culture without toxicology, that didn't look like chemistry. It looked like something had moved in. Visually, cinnabar is unforgettable. It appears as deep scarlet crystals, waxy red masses, or blood-like veins running through pale rock. Under light, the best pieces almost glow, like wet paint, and that exact beauty is what made it so dangerous. Now the money side. At the low end, small, rough cinnabar specimens, common quality, dark red, broken pieces, often sell for $10 to $40. Mid-range pieces with stronger color and nicer texture typically sit around $60 to $250, especially if they're well-shaped and stable. But high-end cinnabar is where collectors get serious. Bright, crystalline, museum-grade cinnabar, sharp red crystals, clean matrix, classic localities, can reach $500 to $3,000 plus, sometimes higher. And that's the twist. Cinnabar is one of the few minerals on Earth that looks like wealth, but behaves like a warning. A stone that ancient cultures treated as sacred, and modern science confirms was quietly poisoning them the entire time. Cinnabar is one of the darkest ironies in mineral history, because ancient cultures treated it like sacred power, and modern science confirmed it was quietly destroying the people closest to it. But the next stone on this list flips the story completely. This one wasn't feared because it poisoned you. It was trusted because people believed it could protect you. Because after centuries of plague, war, nightmares, and unexplained madness, people started searching for a different kind of mineral power. Not a stone that looked like death, but a stone that looked like authority. A color so rare in nature that it was reserved for kings, bishops, and exorcists. And once that purple entered the story, the meaning was inevitable. If demons could enter through weakness, then maybe the stone could hold the mind shut. At number 8, amethyst. The purple stone exorcists trusted. Top 8, amethyst. The purple stone exorcists trusted. Amethyst is one of the strangest stones in human history because it's famous for beauty, yet it earned its reputation through fear. In the ancient world, people didn't first wear amethyst to look elegant. They wore it because they believed it could stop something invisible from getting inside them. Not a virus, not a toxin, a spirit. Across early Christianity, Byzantine traditions, and medieval Europe, amethyst was treated as a protective stone, the kind priests would keep close, not for decoration, but for spiritual defense. It shows up in religious rings, church relics, and even older folk rituals where purple was seen as a color that didn't belong to ordinary life. Purple meant authority. Purple meant the boundary between the human and the divine. And in a world where possession, curses, and evil influence were taken seriously, amethyst became a kind of quiet weapon. What made it believable was its appearance. Amethyst is quartz, but it doesn't look like quartz. It forms in sharp crystals that grow like teeth inside geodes, clusters that look less like a rock and more like a mouth frozen mid-bite. In candlelight, those purple points don't sparkle like diamonds. They stare. The color ranges from pale lavender to deep royal purple, and the best pieces have a cold, clean saturation, like ink spilled into ice. Ancient people didn't have the word radiation or iron impurities. They just saw a stone that looked unnatural and assumed it belonged to the unseen world. And here's the part that keeps the story grounded. Amethyst was often used during times when people were most vulnerable. Grief, illness, nightmares, addiction, and emotional collapse. So the stone didn't just become a symbol of protection. It became a symbol of control, a reminder that you could hold something solid when your mind felt under attack. Now the money side. Amethyst is one of the most accessible spiritual defense stones, which is why it spreads through history so easily. At the low end, small rough clusters and tumbled pieces sell for $3 to $20. Mid-range amethyst geodes and cleaner crystal points usually run $30 to $200, depending on color and size. But high-end amethyst is a different world. Deep purple, perfectly formed crystals, especially from classic locations like Uruguay, can reach $500 to $5,000, plus for large museum-quality geodes. And that's the irony. A stone once trusted to drive out dark spirits is now trusted to decorate the homes of people who still, quietly, fear the dark. Amethyst was the stone people trusted when they felt their minds slipping, when fear, grief, or something unseen pressed too close. But the next stone on this list is darker in a quieter way, because it wasn't used to fight evil. It was used to contain it. In old folklore, this wasn't a gemstone you wore to shine. It was a stone you carried like a pocketed secret, something meant to pull darkness out of you, out of a room, out of a home, and hold it there. And what makes this one chilling is how perfectly the mineral matches the belief, because it literally looks like smoke trapped inside glass, like the earth sealed a shadow and forgot to let it out. At number 7, smoky quartz. The stone people used to trap darkness. Top 7, smoky quartz. The stone people used to trap darkness. Smoky quartz is one of the few gemstones that looks like it already survived something. In old European folklore, especially in the Highlands of Scotland, smoky quartz wasn't treated like a pretty crystal. It was treated like a tool, a dark, quiet stone people carried when they believed something was following them, or when the air in a place didn't feel clean. Not physically dirty, spiritually heavy. In communities where curses, restless spirits, and bad presence were part of daily language, smoky quartz became the stone you kept close when you couldn't explain why your body felt uneasy. And unlike many superstition stones, smoky quartz didn't need a dramatic myth to sell its power. It had the look. Smoky quartz forms in clean, sharp crystals, but the color makes it unsettling. It isn't black. It isn't clear. It's a translucent brown gray, like fog trapped in glass. Sometimes it's so dark it looks like a piece of night you can hold. Other times it's lighter, like old cigarette smoke caught inside a window. That visual matters, because ancient people didn't think in terms of radiation or aluminum impurities. They thought in symbols, and smoky quartz looked like it had absorbed something invisible. So it became associated with the idea of taking darkness in, pulling it out of a person, out of a room, out of a home. Some traditions even treated it like a spiritual container, a stone that could hold grief, fear, or a curse, so it wouldn't keep spreading. And as a geologist, I'll tell you what makes this stone even more fascinating. Smoky quartz is literally quartz that was altered by natural radiation over time. In other words, it really is a crystal changed by invisible forces. That doesn't prove the folklore, but it explains why the folklore felt convincing. Now the money side. Smoky quartz is widely available, which keeps the entry price low. Small tumbled stones and rough chunks usually sell for $2 to $15. Simple points and small clusters often sit around $20 to $80, depending on clarity and color. But high-end smoky quartz can surprise people. Large, perfectly formed, deep-colored crystals, especially from Switzerland, Brazil, or classic alpine finds, can reach $300 to $1,500 plus, and museum specimens can go higher. And that's the twist. Smoky quartz became famous because people believed it could trap darkness. But in the modern world, it's collected for the exact same reason, because it looks like the only kind of darkness you can hold without being harmed by it. Top 6, Labradorite. The stone that looked like a portal. Labradorite is one of the few gemstones that doesn't just look beautiful, it looks wrong, in the best possible way. In old northern folklore, and later in modern spiritual traditions built on earlier beliefs, Labradorite gained a reputation as a veil stone, something linked to the boundary between worlds. Not because people wanted a spooky story, but because the stone itself behaves like it's hiding something. You can hold a piece of labradorite in your hand, and it looks like dull gray rock, almost boring. Then you tilt it by a few degrees, and suddenly a blue-green flash erupts across the surface, like a living eye opening. That effect is called labradorescence. But ancient people didn't have that word, so they gave it a different explanation. They believed the stone was showing you light that wasn't from this world. And once a culture accepts that idea, the rest follows naturally. If a stone can reveal hidden light, then maybe it can reveal hidden spirits. Maybe it can protect you from them. Or worse, maybe it can attract them. That's why labradorite became linked to magic, shadow work, and the unseen. In folklore, it's not a stone of comfort. It's a stone of thresholds, used by people who believed they were walking too close to places the human mind wasn't meant to touch. Visually, labradorite is a paradox. Its base color is ash gray to charcoal, sometimes with rough texture like weathered bone. But inside it, you'll see electric flashes of cobalt blue, neon green, gold, and sometimes even purple. The best pieces look like storm clouds lit from within. And that makes the stone feel aware. Now, the money side. Labradorite is common enough to be affordable, which is part of why it's spread through so many spiritual markets. At the low end, small polished pieces and palm stones sell for $5 to $25. Mid-range cabochons and brighter specimens typically run $30 to $150, depending on flash quality. But high-end labradorite, especially rare, perfectly flashing slabs or exceptional color fields, can reach $300 to $1,200 plus, and top collector pieces can go higher. And here's the reason it holds attention. Labradorite is one of the only stones that can look like a normal rock until the light hits it right, which is exactly how people describe the spirit world for thousands of years. Invisible until it isn't. Top 5, Hematite. The stone that bled when you touched it. Hematite is one of the most misunderstood dark stones in human history Because the fear around it didn't come from legends first. It came from a physical reaction people could witness. Ancient cultures across the Mediterranean, the Middle East, and parts of Europe noticed something unsettling. When you scraped hematite against rough stone, it left a deep red streak, like fresh blood dragged across the surface. And in a world where stones were supposed to be dead, that looked impossible. To early humans, hematite wasn't just a mineral. It was a sign, a substance that could imitate blood without being alive. That alone was enough to pull it into war rituals, burial practices, and protection charms. Because once a stone looks like blood, it becomes linked to everything blood represents: life, death, violence, sacrifice, and spirits. That's why hematite gained a reputation as a stone that could hold conflict, and why some traditions treated it as a shield against hostile forces. Not soft healing, not comfort, defense. Visually, hematite is deceptive. In your hand, it often looks metallic gray, almost like a piece of dark steel. Some pieces are shiny and mirror-like. Others are rough, heavy, and dull, but still feel unusually dense, as if they weigh more than they should. But the real identity of hematite isn't the surface, it's the streak. That blood-red powder is what turned it into a fear object. People believed it was connected to the dead, or that it could call the dead, especially when worn into battle or placed in graves. And from a geology standpoint, the explanation is simple. Hematite is iron oxide, one of the main sources of iron on Earth. The red streak is the same chemistry that makes soil red, rust red, and ancient ochre pigments red. But for thousands of years, nobody called it iron oxide. They called it a stone that bleeds. Now the money side, hematite is common, which keeps the low end cheap. Small tumbled stones and basic pieces usually sell for $2 to $15. Mid-range polished hematite, carvings, and higher luster specimens often run $20 to $80, depending on quality. But high-end hematite exists too, especially rare crystal forms or museum specimens with perfect structure and mirror surfaces. Those can reach $200 to $1,000 plus, and in collector circles, exceptional pieces can go higher. And that's the twist. Hematite became feared because it looked like blood, but it became valuable for the exact same reason, because it reminds humans that the earth carries iron, the same element that built our weapons, our wars, and our history. Top 4. Black tourmaline, the SCHORL. The stone people used like a spiritual lock. Black tourmaline is one of the few stones in history that was never really treated as jewelry first. It was treated like protection. Across old folk traditions in Europe, parts of Africa, and later in modern spiritual systems that borrowed from older beliefs, black tourmaline gained a reputation as the stone you keep close when something feels wrong. When the air in a room changes, when a home feels heavy, or when a person seems off, not sick, not angry, just carrying something you don't want near you. And what's interesting is that black tourmaline wasn't linked to demons because it looked evil. It was linked to demons because it looked like it could block them. The idea was simple. If dark spirits move through cracks, shadows, and invisible spaces, then you need something that acts like a seal. That became tourmaline. In old superstition, people placed black stones near doorways, under beds, and at the corners of property, like a spiritual fence. Some believed it could stop curses from entering. Others believed it could trap negative energy the way a cage traps an animal. And unlike many ritual stones, tourmaline's appearance made the story believable. Black tourmaline often forms as long, vertical crystals, rough, ridged, and striated like burned wood. Some pieces look like charred bones. Others look like broken antennae pulled out of the earth. It's not shiny, it's not pretty, it looks functional. And as a geologist, I can tell you something that adds to its reputation. Tourmaline is piezoelectric and pyroelectric. That means pressure or heat can create tiny electrical charges on the surface. To modern science, that's normal physics. To ancient people, that felt like a stone that reacted to unseen forces. Now the money side. Black tourmaline is common enough that the low end is extremely affordable. Small rough pieces and tumbled stones usually sell for $3 to $20. Mid-range crystals, longer, cleaner, more intact, typically run $30 to $150, especially if they're sharp and well-formed. But high-end black tourmaline exists too. Large, perfectly formed SCHORL crystals on matrix with dramatic shape and size can reach $300 to $2,000 plus, and museum-grade specimens can go higher. And here's the twist. Most dark spirit stones are feared because people think they attract evil. Black tourmaline is feared and respected for the opposite reason, because people believe it's the stone that says no.
Top 3. Onyx, the stone people feared would remember your shadow. Onyx is one of those stones that looks harmless until you learn what people used to believe it could do. Across parts of the ancient Mediterranean world, the Middle East, and later in European folklore, onyx wasn't just seen as a dark gemstone. It was seen as a stone with memory, a material that could absorb what you were, not just what you wore. And that's where the fear started. Because in older belief systems, darkness wasn't only the absence of light. Darkness was where spirits lived, where curses hid, where intentions could rot. So when a stone came along that was naturally black, smooth, and cold-looking, a stone that seemed to drink light instead of reflecting it, people began to treat it like a spiritual object, not a decorative one. Some traditions claimed onyx could pull sorrow into itself. Others claimed it could amplify anger, jealousy, or obsession. And the darkest versions of the myth went further, that onyx could attract spirits that were already searching for a weak mind. Not because the stone was evil, but because it was a surface where something could attach. Visually, onyx is deceptively simple. It's usually a deep black or dark charcoal, sometimes with faint banding. It polishes beautifully, almost too beautifully, becoming glossy like still water at night. And that shine is part of what made people uncomfortable, because onyx doesn't sparkle like a diamond. It stares back. And if you've ever held a polished onyx piece, you know the sensation. It feels heavier than expected, colder than expected, and somehow more serious than a normal stone. Geologically, onyx is a form of banded chalcedony, a microcrystalline quartz. There's nothing supernatural in its chemistry. But culturally, onyx became a symbol of restraint, secrecy, mourning, and power. And in societies where people believed in curses, that combination was enough to link it to dark spirits. Now, the money side. Onyx is widely available, which keeps the low end cheap. Small tumbled onyx stones and simple beads often sell for $2 to $15. Mid-range onyx carvings, polished spheres, and jewelry-grade pieces usually run $20 to $120, depending on size and quality. But high-end onyx is about craftsmanship. Large, flawless black onyx used in luxury jewelry, intarsia, or antique carvings can reach $300 to $3,000 plus, especially when paired with gold or historical provenance. And here's the irony. Onyx was feared because people thought it could hold darkness. But in the modern world, that's exactly why people still buy it, because it looks like control. A stone that doesn't shine, because it doesn't need to. Top 2. Jet, the stone the dead were allowed to keep. Jet is one of the few dark gemstones that doesn't feel like it belongs to the living. It feels like it was made for mourning. Across ancient Britain, Roman-era Europe, and later Victorian England, jet became more than a material. It became a rule, a socially accepted way to carry death close to the body without being accused of witchcraft. Because in older cultures, anything tied to the dead was dangerous. Not physically, spiritually. People feared that grief could open a door, that death could leave something behind, that a spirit could follow you home, not out of love, but out of unfinished hunger. And jet was one of the only stones that society allowed people to wear openly during those periods, precisely because it was associated with funerals and protection. But here's what makes jet truly unsettling. It isn't a crystal, it's fossilized wood. Jet forms when ancient trees are buried, compressed, and transformed over millions of years, turning into a black material that looks like stone, but still carries the identity of something that was once alive. That alone was enough to trigger spiritual fear, because jet didn't just look black, it looked like a life that had been burned and preserved. In folklore, jet was believed to absorb sorrow, repel curses, and protect against restless spirits. Some traditions claimed it could keep nightmares away or prevent a ghost from attaching to a grieving person. And visually, jet is distinct. It's deep black, often with a soft, oily shine. It can be polished to a mirror finish, but it never sparkles. It looks like darkness turned solid, lightless, quiet, and final. And when you wear it, it doesn't feel like jewelry. It feels like a symbol. Now, the money side. Jet can be inexpensive in small forms. Simple jet beads, small carvings, or tumbled pieces often sell for $5 to $30. Mid-range antique jet jewelry, especially Victorian mourning pieces, usually runs $80 to $400, depending on age, design, and condition. But high-end jet is about provenance. Rare, historically documented mourning jewelry, large carved pieces, or museum-quality Whitby jet can reach $500 to $5,000. Plus, and sometimes far more at auction. And that's the twist. Jet was never feared because people thought it summoned demons. Jet was feared because people believed it did something worse. It made the dead feel close enough to touch. Top 1. Obsidian, the black glass that cultures used to speak to the underworld. Obsidian is one of the only stones in human history that looks like it was designed to scare you. Not because it's black, but because it's sharp. Across ancient Mesoamerica, especially the Aztec and Maya worlds, obsidian wasn't just a material for tools. It was a sacred substance tied to blood, sacrifice, and the boundary between humans and gods. And in those cultures, the gods were not gentle, they were forces. So when obsidian entered religious life, it didn't become a symbol of peace. It became a symbol of contact. The idea that you could cut reality open and look into something deeper. And that belief didn't come out of nowhere. Obsidian is volcanic glass. It forms when lava cools so quickly that crystals don't have time to grow. The result is a black, glossy stone that reflects light like a mirror, but breaks into edges sharper than steel. That combination is psychologically perfect for fear, because it looks like a mirror, and it behaves like a weapon. In old traditions, obsidian mirrors were used for divination, not as a party trick, but as a ritual object. Some believed you could see spirits, messages, or warnings inside the black surface. Others believed it could reveal hidden enemies. And the darkest belief of all, that obsidian didn't just show you the spirit world, it invited it. Visually, obsidian is pure drama. It's deep black, sometimes smoky, sometimes with silver sheen, rainbow flash, or snowflake patterns. Polished obsidian looks like still water at midnight. Rough obsidian looks like broken night glass, and the moment it catches light, it feels like an eye. Now the money side. Obsidian is common in volcanic regions, which keeps the low end cheap. Small tumbled pieces, arrowheads, and simple carvings often sell for $3 to $20. Mid-range obsidian mirrors, polished spheres, and larger display pieces typically run $30 to $250, depending on craftsmanship and pattern. But high-end obsidian is where collectors get serious. Large, flawless mirrors, rare color sheen varieties, or museum-quality ancient artifacts can reach $500 to $10,000 plus, and authentic archaeological pieces can go far beyond that. And that's why obsidian stays at number 1. because most demon stones are feared because they look dark. Obsidian is feared because it looks like darkness, and it can cut you for real.
And that's what makes these stones so unsettling. Not because demons are real, but because the fear was. Every culture on Earth created a language for darkness, and again, they used minerals to give that darkness a shape, a smell, a color, a weight you could hold in your hand. Some of these stones were linked to spirits because they were dangerous, some because they were beautiful in a way that felt unnatural, and some because they appeared in the exact places humans already believed were cursed. But the most important detail is this: none of these stones needed mythology to be powerful. The Earth already made them that way. If you enjoyed this kind of deep dive, where geology and belief collide, make sure to like the video, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, which stone on this list felt the most disturbing, and which one would you never keep in your home? I'll see you in the next one.